Hi Justin, it's just me, Ehren, Question Period Canada. Sorry that you were playing hooky today, so we're going to bring you the highlights of Commons Question Period, the things that you missed on your day off when you were playing hooky again on a Monday. You don't show up very often on Mondays. We're going to look at the highlights. We're going to kick it off here with Polyev. He's got questions for the Housing Minister, Sean Fraser. Justin, we need help in housing. Let's get started. Check it out.
Speaker, he clearly didn't watch my Common Sense documentary, which is being widely acclaimed by all. If he had, he would know the facts. Our Common Sense plan takes the GST off for apartments that are affordable, below average cost. He wants to take it off just for $10 million penthouses. We want to take the bureaucracy out of the picture so home builders can build. He's got a $4 billion fund that, according to the City of Halifax, is funding more bureaucratic gatekeepers. So, why won't he watch the documentary, follow the Common Sense plan to get rid of the taxes and the bureaucracy and build more homes?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, it's fascinating. For him, it's about how many people are going to watch his Twitter videos. For me, it's about how many people are going to have a roof over their head.
Hear, hear.
The right path forward is going to have Canada make investments in home building, not cuts to home builders. The right investment will reduce taxes on the construction of homes, not put taxes on them. Mr. Speaker, the right path forward will not repeat the mistakes of the past by cutting funding for affordable housing for 30 years, as that honourable member pledges to do. We will make the investments. We will not accept that cuts are the right approach.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
But here's the reality. People don't have roofs over their head. After 8 years of this Prime Minister and his Housing Minister of photo ops and media puff pieces, the rent has doubled, mortgage payments have doubled, down payments have doubled. In his own home province, in Halifax, they now have 30 homeless encampments. 9 out of 10 young people say they will never be able to afford a home. And what have they done? Create a $4 billion housing accelerator that 2 years later hasn't completed a single solitary house. Why won't they get rid of the bureaucracy and the taxes so that we can bring homes Canadians can afford?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, the irony when I take criticisms about photo ops from that member is shocking, because he continues to use his opportunities to travel around the country on the government's dime to take pictures in front of projects that our government funded. The reality is the fund that he is talking about has secured agreements that will change the way that cities are built, not just in Halifax, but in Moncton, Kitchener, Kelowna, Calgary, Vaughan, Brampton, Richmond Hill, London, Hamilton, the province of Quebec, and I will continue the more time he gives.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
You know, all those homes in all those cities that he's talking about, they're all open concept. They have no walls, they have no windows, they have no roofs, they have no basements, no kitchens, no bathrooms. In fact, Mr. Speaker, other than that, they're the best homes you can imagine, and you'll have to imagine them because after 8 years, they still don't exist. So, instead of pouring billions of dollars into local government gatekeepers who block construction, why won't he follow my Common Sense plan to require cities boost housing construction by 15% a year or lose their money unless they beat the target and get a building bonus? Common sense.
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member's argument falls apart when you come to understand he ignores the good work that has been done since the National Housing Strategy was adopted in 2017. There are hundreds of thousands of homes that exist today that have been built or retrofitted as a direct result of government supports that have put them in place. Mr. Speaker, when you actually look at what the honourable member's policy will do, it will raise taxes on middle-class home construction. It will cut funding to cities who desperately need the infrastructure so they can build more homes, and he will remove support for affordable housing altogether, which is a cardinal sin we cannot repeat after a 30-year history where we should have learned those lessons.
The Honourable Leader.
Justin, your cabinet is a mess. What's wrong with Sean Fraser? He's always dancing like a clown. Seems inexperienced. Let's flip that around. Let's take a look at one of your way too old cabinet ministers. Lawrence Macaulay. He's a dinosaur. John Barlow, an MP from Alberta, has questions for him.
Honourable Member for Foothills.
A common sense Conservative Bill 234 will save farmers close to $1 billion. But this Prime Minister who is demanding his senators block this bill is not worth the cost. The Keelstra farm in Okotoks paid $180,000 in carbon taxes this year. When the Prime Minister quadruples that tax, it'll be $480,000 just in carbon taxes. There is no way when 2 million Canadians are relying on food banks that we cannot afford to have affordable, nutritious, Canadian-grown food. Will the Prime Minister finally remove the carbon tax from families, farmers, and First Nations?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, being a farmer, I fully understand how important it is to take care of the soil and to take care of the environment. Our party has a plan for the environment. My honourable colleague's party does not have a plan for the environment. Quite simply, we're able to make, with our plan, millions of dollars in British Columbia to help farmers innovate, increase their production, and make sure farmers remain on the cutting edge. We have and will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
I agree with the Agriculture Minister. Our plan is definitely not to bankrupt farmers and continue to make food unaffordable. Canadian farmers are struggling under punishing input costs like the carbon tax. In fact, often the carbon tax costs them more than the natural gas they use. But the Bill C-234, a common sense Conservative bill, is the solution. But the Prime Minister is blocking his senators from passing this bill in the Senate. Will the Prime Minister follow his 2001 campaign and pass it forward and let this bill pass the Senate and finally take the carbon tax off farmers, families, and First Nations?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate my colleague's concern, but I think he's fully aware the only party in this House that has any control over senators is the Conservative Party of Canada. We do not have senators in our party. And there was some talk of harassment in the Senate. We're not involved in harassment. What we want to do as a government is make sure we make farmers innovate, produce more product, and be more profitable. We have and will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, Justin, what are you doing to poor Larry McCauley, making him answer questions? That poor old dinosaur should just retire. He looks lost. Up next, we've got a couple of questions from your NDP coalition partners. It seems like they're fed up with your cabinet too. Freeland and Jolie are up to answer the questions. Your cabinet needs to be rethought.
Three CEOs raked in billions of profits as they jacked up prices for Canadians just trying to put food on the table. And what did this Prime Minister do? Nothing. And now Sobeys workers in Halifax are on the streets demanding fair wages so they can afford to buy the food that they sell. Sobeys CEO, who makes $6.8 million a year, has insulted their workers with a 5-cent raise per hour, a nickel. So what is this government doing to tackle the corporate greed that is exploiting workers from coast to coast?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our government absolutely believes that everyone in Canada needs to pay their fair share. That's why we have permanently increased corporate income tax on financial institutions by 1.5%. That is why we implemented a COVID recovery dividend of 15%. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are introducing historic changes to competition law in Canada. These will increase competition, particularly in the grocery sector. That is going to help Canadian families from coast to coast to coast.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Canadians with loved ones in Gaza have spent many sleepless nights worrying about their families as the humanitarian crisis worsens. UNICEF now calls Gaza the most dangerous place for children in the world. Today, the NDP joined with a coalition of Palestinian families and community groups to call for special immigration measures so that people in Canada can reunite with their loved ones. The Australian government is already doing it. Canada must do the same. Will the Liberals immediately enact special immigration measures to include extended family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents from Gaza?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, I agree that Gaza is one of the worst places to live in the world right now, and we're very preoccupied by the fact that many children, too many children, and too many women have lost their lives. I met with many humanitarian groups earlier today to share my concern and to hear their thoughts on how we can make sure that Palestinian civilians are protected. And meanwhile, I must say that we are extremely happy that 130 Canadians were able to cross Rafah last night and are now back in Egypt heading towards Canada. Thank you.
Heads up, Justin, just as a voter, people do not like Chrystia Freeland. She comes off as a liar and she's very condescending. A witch. Maybe she's a witch. People say that. I don't know if it's true. Damien Kirk is up next. He's another wild one from Alberta, an MP, a conservative from out there. It's pretty crazy, but he's taking these questions to Lawrence Macaulay, and Lawrence is having trouble. He's aged out.
Canadians depend on affordable proteins like chicken, yet over the last 8 years, families are forced to cut back on these essentials. Canadian farms lead the world in environmental best practices, but the Liberals choose only to punish them with higher costs, red tape, and a quadrupling of the carbon tax. A chicken farmer near Redwater, Alberta is already paying nearly $2,000 a month in the carbon tax. Come the middle of winter, that cost will double. Costs that are passed on to Canadians who are already struggling to put food on the table. Will these Liberals finally take the tax off families, farmers, and First Nations finally?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Speaking with farmers across the country, one of the biggest concerns they have is why the opposition party does not have a policy or a plan to deal with the environment. Chicken farmers understand very well, like every other farmer, you need to have a plan. We have to deal with the environment. And because we do have a plan for environment, we're able to assist chicken farmers. We're able to make sure the supply management system remains in shape. You can tell my honourable colleague, Mr. Speaker, can tell his chicken farmer that we will make sure that supply management remains strong.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, it is unbelievable how out of touch that Ag Minister is. Jake from Vermeer's Dairy near Camrose saw a bill of $1,700 in carbon tax charges alone last month, and it's going to be more as winter settles in on the Canadian prairies. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that these Liberals do not have an environmental plan, but rather a tax plan that punishes those who are best equipped to lower the price of food in this country. Mr. Speaker, my question is simple. Will those Liberals tell their Liberal-appointed senators to pass common sense Conservative Bill C-234 to axe the tax so farmers can feed our people?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
I appreciate my honourable question, and my office has been in regular contact with the farmers you spoke about. The operation has benefited from several of our government programs, including the BRM program and funding through the Climate Action Incentive Fund. We will continue to support large operations in the country, and we will continue to work with small agricultural operations in this country to make sure both operations succeed and expand.
Psst, Justin, just so you know, as a voter, seeing a guy in your cabinet the age of Lawrence Macaulay, which is 77, it doesn't look good. He's saying that he's cutting edge. How can he possibly be? Okay, Justin, just to wrap it up, so you do have the highlights and know what happened on your day that you were playing hooky. On a Monday, again, we have Rick Perkins, an MP from Nova Scotia, and Mike Barrett, an MP from Ontario. They've got questions, and the Secretary of Innovation is going to try to answer the questions. Ryan Turnbull barely can read.
For South Shore St. Margaret's.
After 8 years, the NDP Liberal government has turned their backs on Canadian labour. The government is bringing in 1,600 taxpayer-funded foreign replacement workers for the battery assembly plant in Windsor. That's $40 billion or $3,000 in taxes per household. Conservatives have been consistently demanding the release of these contracts publicly, but the NDP have flip-flopped and are working with the Liberals to keep the contracts secret, to hide these bad contracts. When will the Liberals and the NDP stand up for Canadian auto workers and release the contracts?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr.
Mr. Speaker, now either the Conservative leader takes us all for fools or he thinks the Canadian public was in a coma for the last 20 years. Either way, no one could take his claim to be protecting local jobs seriously. Not only is his track record as part of the previous Conservative government abysmal, consisting of the loss of over 300,000 manufacturing jobs, he has also proven to be one of the most anti-worker MPs, a legacy which he continues today by demonstrating and opposing legislation that creates good jobs for Canadian workers. While Conservatives pretend to care about workers, we'll continue to create thousands of jobs.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
The NDP have turned their back on Canadian workers to back this Prime Minister and his secret deal to bring in overseas replacement workers. It's clear that after 8 years, this Prime Minister isn't worth the cost to Canadian workers. The NDP member for Windsor voted to keep secret the contracts from Canadian taxpayers. So if the NDP Liberal government have nothing to hide, then why not show Canadians the details that's going to cost them $3,000 per family? So will the Prime Minister finally release the contract details so Canadians can see how many replacement workers $40 billion buys?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Contrary to what the Conservatives claim, our government has always been clear regarding jobs created by investments like LG's Stellantis. In a recent article, Yakubuski writes, "These workers will only be here for a matter of months. The plant could not be built without them, or at least not in time for battery production to be up and running by 2025. They will not steal jobs from Canadian construction workers, nor occupy any of the 2,500 permanent jobs." Now, I know the opposition leader has a hard time showing respect to journalists, but maybe the Conservatives should stop fear-mongering and read the Globe and Mail.
I want to read the contract.
Quick question for you, Justin. What kind of deal do you have with the Globe and Mail that Turnbull is promoting that? And he should probably get a tutor to help him with his reading difficulties, his challenges there. We're going to wrap up anyways, Justin. Those are the highlights, so now you're caught up on your Hooky Day. That's what happened. As a voter, I want to let you know it's not looking good for the Liberals right now. The Conservatives are starting to look pretty good. They've got a long list of MPs that are putting the questions to you and helping Canadians find out the answers. What is going on? Anyhow, like and subscribe, Justin. That would be great. My name's Ehren. This is Question Period Canada. We do highlights every night, and we'll let you know, Justin. We will let you know what's going on all of the question periods that you miss. There's a lot of them. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. We're here every night.